if we look at the ruling numbers, like if you're a ruling two, they're very loyal. They're not really wanting to be the boss. They're happy to be in a team and someone else. So you could use that one I've just mentioned, collophilum, for them. The ruling threes, I mean, they're so smart and that, they're so much mental power, but they can also be very critical. So, the yellow cowslip orchid, which grows in your state, Western Australia, for people with that critical nature. I'm a four, so, there's that tends to be always busy and working and doing lots of things. So black-eyed Susan is a classic one, so they don't burn themselves out by doing too much. We think of a six with, there's a remedy, turkey bush, for creativity, but also sixes worry more. My wife's a six, and she's and I say, you're just being a big fat six, and joke with her because she gets worried about things. So Crowia, we won for that emotional tendency, is also for worry.
Welcome back to the Numerology Show. I'm your host, Hayden Crawford, and today I have the absolute pleasure of speaking with a true pioneer in vibrational medicine, Ian White. Now, Ian is the founder of the Australian Bushflower Essences and the internationally acclaimed author of Australian Bushflower Essences, the Australian Bushflower Remedies, and White Light Essences as well. Now, his incredible body of work has helped people around the world to tap into the healing power of nature to transform their emotional and spiritual well-being. In today's episode, we'll be diving into the fascinating connection between numerology and the flower kingdom and exploring how the ancient wisdom of Pythagorean numerology weaves through the plant and vibrational realms. So get ready for an enlightening and heart-opening conversation. You're going to love it. So welcome, Ian. Welcome.
Thanks, Hayden.
Oh, it's lovely to see you. It's been a while. It must have been, I was thinking about 8 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, that we met in Fremantle. And I learned so much from you, during that time. And it was pivotal, really, in my own awakening process. And of course, the Australian Bushflower Essences really worked their magic on me and helping me, sort of jump from the corporate world and into celestial. So, for people that are new to your work, can you share your own journey with the Australian Bushflower Essences and how it all began? And was there a pivotal moment of awakening that set you on this path in the first place?
Absolutely. And for those who are thinking, what's flower essences? It's just as you mentioned, it's a vibrational healing modality. It's been around for thousands of years. The earliest records go back to ancient Egypt, where people used to collect the dew of flowers to treat emotional imbalances. In Europe, Hildegard von Bingen in the 12th century, very famous, and it's the earliest recorded European to use flower essences. And, more indigenous people around the world have been using it for a long time. Sometimes they'd eat the flowers, sometimes they'd float it in water. A lot of knowledge was lost, and then Edward Bach, an English doctor, brought that information back. And my background is I've been as a naturopath and herbalist for 45 years or more now. And when I was studying, I was predominantly a homeopath, but I liked the idea of flower essences because anyone could use them. They were safe, no side effects. And they're only the ones in England. I thought, why isn't anyone in Australia making essences? Because, my grandmother and great-grandmother were some of the first white people to be, working with Australian plants. And I lived next door to my grandmother, and I'd spend a lot of the time, our properties backed onto National Park, going through the bush, and I helped her make extracts and tinctures. And she died when I was about 9, but the legacy I was left was in the bush. There was all these healing plants. And so when I started my naturopathy, we came across, the bark flowers. I thought, great, but again, where is the Australian ones? And then, I was in practice for, quite a few years, 3 or 4 years actually. And a friend I'd shared a house with when I was a student, he's early 30s, said, look, I've been diagnosed with bowel cancer, and would you run a healing circle for me? And I was only too happy to do that. And group of all our friends came, we meditated, directed energy to Jim. And, next day the operator said the bowel cancer was everywhere. So I continued the healing circle weekly in my home and, opened up to anyone who needed healing. And Jim died about 6 months later. And shortly after that, in the meditations, I started getting pictures of plants, told where to go and make them up and what their qualities were. So, it was very much present on the platter. And if I didn't know the plant, there'd be a little caption underneath with the botanic name, which was very helpful as well. So that was the beginning. And, sometimes they'd say very specific areas where I had to go and make them up. And I thought, I've never seen that flower. To go there and it was a mass of them. So for 2 years, I was just in the bush every day. I still had my practice in the afternoon and evenings, researching, but it gave me the opportunity to see how the remedies work. So I was giving them to other practitioners to use because the results were so good. And they're working a lot quicker than the bark flowers, twice a day for 2 weeks rather than 4 times a day for a month. And people could really feel the results. So, after 2 years, I started publishing the information, and that really took it then to many different countries. So, and from what you mentioned, was there a pivotal moment? I think I I was doing a science degree at university. After the first year, in the holidays, I went traveling in India and I got very sick. And, I came back physical and emotional mess. 3 months later, I still wasn't getting any better. My skinny little arms and legs, a pot belly. I didn't have the energy to burn up food. And then I started, working with herbs again, herbal medicine. I started doing Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, and it really started to turn things around. So it was really that illness in India. And I got right near the end of my science degree, and I've been trying to combine natural therapies with it. And I realized, well, this is the thing I really love. So I can remember the next year I started my full-time naturopathy. And it was about 4 or 5 weeks into the course, and I was sitting on the back steps of my house, and I had this elation. I felt I finally found what I'm here to do. So, yeah, unfortunately, it was a bit of a painful journey, that illness in India to get there, but it was, yeah, a turning point.
It's often the way, isn't it? How we have to go through, almost like the dark night of the soul and heart. We go through some sort of traumatic experience that triggers that
Yeah.
awakening process. So it's always something, out of the ordinary, I think. So that's wonderful that, that is the thing that actually woke you up to your purpose. So
And
you are
actually,
actually,
Hayden, that was look, when I got started my naturopath, that's when I studied also numerology at the same time. And um, I look back, right, and I was in a year seven. There's year cycles, and seven is the real learning of lessons. And I thought, oh, this is interesting. In year seven, had that experience.
well, it's really interesting you should say that, in because not my last year seven, I had one last year, but the one 9 years before,
Yeah,
that's when I left the corporate world and, sort of really started branching out and setting up Dreamtime Academy, and my whole world fell apart.
yeah.
And, it's so interesting because when you look back at those years in hindsight, you see that it's happening for you and not to you. But it's really tough when you're going through it. And, I felt like I was going mad. I honestly thought that I'd
Yeah.
lost the plot. So I get it.
Year sevens are very powerful and much better when you're in the year eight looking back at them and you've recovered, hopefully.
I would say. Yeah. Okay. So you're actually a fifth generation herbalist. So how has that lineage shaped your approach to healing and plant consciousness?
Well, my dad was the black sheep of the family, he was a pharmacist, but he also used herbs. You go into his pharmacy and he'd, make up herbal mixes for people. So I was really brought up with um, little brown bottles, and here I am all these years later, little brown bottles. But just having that understanding, from my grandmother and my dad, that native plants and herbal remedies, and you know, there's so much powerful healing. So like I grew up in the bush, and like just being so happy when you're in there, and it's a great gift to have that family lineage.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it's funny as well, fifth generation, the number five. is
My
really
yeah,
significant, isn't it?
my daughter, I think she was about 4, and she was in a Steiner preschool, and there was only a small group of them, and one of the girls was sick. So Grace got the other girls, and it was a couple of boys. They said, and she told them, "Come on, we're going to pick flowers. We're going to put it in a glass of water, leave it in the sun, and then she's going to drink it, and she'll be better." And I'm thinking, sixth generation on the way. I think that was unfortunately the highlight. I think we've had a, but she's just had a year ago her first child, and I saw a little video she took of it today. He's got a tube of emergency cream and he's putting it in his mouth and smiling and putting it back in. So maybe it's going to skip a generation to the sixth one.
I love that. Oh, that's brilliant. So when did you first notice a deeper symbolic language within the plants, and how did you come to connect it with systems like numerology and the doctrine of signatures?
Yeah. I think once the information came through about the plants and some understanding about their qualities, then going and looking at that plant, what could you see in the plant which would be that clue, which is that term doctrine of signatures, that this plant does work in that way? And the flannel flower was the name of the flower that I was told to go there, and I thought there's no flannel flowers there. There's a mass of flannel flowers, and if you touch the flower, it's like velvet, and it's very good for intimacy, for physical intimacy, feeling comfortable being touched and held, but also emotional intimacy. So um, I started noticing too how many petals do the flower have, tying that into numerology. So and how many stamens. Like it's once you have that understanding of what the basic quality of the numbers are, you can then apply it and look at it and see it in the nature realm. Like we have a flower called Crowea, and it's got 5 petals, and in the grid, 5 is the center of the emotional plane.
Yeah, it's this one here, isn't it?
It is,
It's
yeah.
this beautiful flower here, which is um, 5 petals and it's pink. It's gorgeous. It's one of my
And it's
favorites, actually.
Yeah, it's the most popular of all the 71 flowers. Like every country, it's always near the top of that, if not the top. And it's got a very prominent center. And we use this remedy for people who feel things intensely. Like if you've got a lot of fives in your chart or a ruling 5, that energy will go to your solar plexus when you're stressed. And Crowea is great for that. And then on the physical level, it's working for poor digestion. If there's too much acid, it lowers it. There's not enough, it boosts it up. So, and then we look in the plant and say, 5 and the raised center. And, there's a lovely flower, pink flannel flower. Hadn't been seen flowering for 40 years when I first made it up. And it's very much for the children coming through in those first 5 years to keep their hearts open because they're going to do so much healing through the heart. And in the flower, it's got 11 petals, which is, one of the master numbers, and it's got that beautiful pink, which is that love vibration. So, again, look, interesting. How many petals has this one got? Some of the essences working on relationship have the 6 petals, like the bush gardenia, which is we use when there's a staleness happening in a relationship and taking a partner for granted. So it's really lovely if you've got that understanding in numerology, then you can see what another clue within the plant kingdom of what qualities it has.
Yeah, so it sort of reveals this information through the texture, as you say, in the flannel flower and others, the numerology of the petals, so the number of petals that it's got, and also the color as well, plays a
Absolutely.
pivotal role in the language of light that it speaks, doesn't it?
Yeah. So you find, the yellow flowers very much working on the mind and the intellect. And there's one called Hybertia. And when the petals are falling, they go on the ground and they're leaving heart shapes. It's like this carpet of yellow hearts. And one of its messages to get out of your head and get into your heart and combine the two. So yeah, and the pink flowers for that love vibration, and this, the purple for the spirituality. I mean, there's so many clues on many levels, and you of all people really appreciate color. So yeah, seeing that in the flowers.
I really do. And it was interesting because I was having a walk around Kings Park because I take my dogs into Perth at the weekends with Mark, my husband, and There's some jacaranda trees, massive jacaranda trees up
Yeah.
there. And of course, at the right time of year, they shed their beautiful violet flowers all over the ground. And I was thinking, okay, so I know that the jacaranda is very good if you're feeling scattered, and it can help to refocus you. And I was thinking it was interesting because I would have assumed that, that the flowers should have been yellow then if it's dealing with the mind. And then it suddenly dawned on me that, actually in color therapy, the complementary colors can become the antidote as well. So the opposite color of violet is yellow, so opposite. And so of course it makes perfect sense that you would have a lilac or a violet colored flower to treat an aspect like being scattered.
Yeah. And it's also, if you think of the time of year when we get it, it's coming up towards the end of the year. It's the Christmas. People are getting busier and busier, and there's so much distraction going on. And then you see this beautiful lilac from the jacaranda and the carpets, as you mentioned, underneath. And it's like, you're slowing down. Again, in color therapy, you have red, which is stimulating, but then you will have the other spectrum, that purple, which is that slowing down, sedating. And with the jacaranda, it's the only tree that I've ever heard about that if when you cut it and you can see the ring cycles giving the age, etc. All of the other trees in the world have round circular rings, and jacaranda is square. And it's that sense of structure that you're putting into it.
I
So,
love that. That's
for
amazing. I had
young
no
children,
idea.
ADHD, scattered, they can't focus very well. It's very good for centering them.
Yeah, it's like a framework, isn't it? It's like a
Yeah,
building block,
yeah.
so it can brings in that vibration of the four, which is very grounding, which is amazing. I love that.
And
So
forms the center of the physical plane. And now we're having in the charts of the children born this millennium, no numbers, the 147 not in their birth date. So no numbers on that physical plane. So some of the essence is there to help really ground and anchor them, including the jacaranda can help too. Yeah.
that's wonderful because it's definitely needed. I've noticed that a lot as well with this new generation, especially the ones that are born after the year 2000, but
Yeah.
specifically the ones with loads of twos in their birth chart. They're completely different to us. A lot of them, they're what I call the rainbow kids, or some of them have come directly down through from source consciousness, and they might not have even like originated in a constellation like the Pleiades or Arcturus or Lyra. They've come purely through from source
Yeah.
just to be on the planet. And they miss so many numbers. So they do have a lot of rebalancing. So the flower essences, I should imagine, are absolutely essential for, to add those missing elements, aren't they?
Yeah, and if it's been a numerologist delight since the year 2000, some of the things that we've had. And, one of my teachers in Brazil, her nephews, twins, they're born on the 22nd of the 2nd, 2002. And like now we could have had someone born in 2022. So, and all those twos that increase sensitivity, but also not like picking up things which aren't there, that little, and that overreaction. We have a flower called the fringed violet. Again, it's purple, but it's like little fringes. So it's just protecting the aura, and so you don't take in from other people or other situations. And those children,
Yeah.
yeah,
It's that beautiful flower there, isn't it? The
yeah,
fringed violet. It's absolutely gorgeous.
yeah. And you can see the fringe, and it's great. If there's any damage to the aura, it heals the aura, but just strengthen it so you're not, getting distracted and taking on. Because I mean, they're so sensitive. They go to a concert, and there might be 100 people there, and if someone's sad, they start feeling sad. So it blocks that out so they know what they're feeling. I
Yeah,
think,
and it's interesting you should say that because I remember that you gave an example on the course that you ran, and it was, who is this person's birthday? And it was somebody with loads of twos in their birth chart. And you asked the group, and I remember I got it straight away. It was Steve Irwin. And
yeah,
then I didn't dare say anything, and you were like, okay, so if Hayden had trusted his intuition, then you would have known that it was right. It was Steve Irwin. And obviously look at Steve Irwin, because he's an animal whisperer, basically, isn't he?
yeah. Yeah, that sensitivity, that ability to really tune in and get an awareness, that's the very positive thing of those multiple twos. The other thing with Steve Irwin, that his ruling number is a 6. And he was working in his dad's zoo, and then he would go off and do filming with his family. So, like, yeah, he was, yeah.
Amazing. It was an amazing example, and it just made perfect sense to me. So do you find that plants almost choose to work with you, or do you feel more like a translator of their innate messages?
I think that every plant has a healing quality, and some are just waiting for when the time is ready for that gift that they're going to bring. So, as there's a need arising in society, essences will come down to meet that need. And maybe all the pastimes have been, working with herbs, not just this lifetime, but many lifetimes, and sometimes more hermit-like. And this time it's like get that information out. So sometimes getting that message that now this plant is ready. And there've been times when, a flower I had a very strong connection to when I was quite small with my grandmother called Sydney Rose. And it was so popular, being picked out. It had a beautiful scent. It's in the Baronia family. And she had my grandmother hadn't seen any for quite a long time, and she was thought maybe there's none left, and we went walking one day, and there was this nice little bunch of it, and she was so excited. I went back to it later that day, picked it all, and gave it to my mother. As 4-year-old boys, want to do nice things for their mums. And she actually came for dinner that night, and she came in, saw all the Sydney Rose, and I've never known her to be angry, but she thought I'd picked the last of the Sydney Rose. And I thought when the essences started coming through with all the information, this would be one of the first ones. But it came through like that, and that was started in the mid 80s, but it was 1999, like 14 years later, just around going in the year 2000. And there'd been 3 grand crosses in the sky, and a lot of people saw this is that entering that new age. And it was the only 2, 3 times a plant has verbally spoken to me. More, it's an inner knowing. And Sydney Rose came through and said, it's time, it has to be done today. And I thought, looking around, who's this person? And was the Sydney Rose. So, the plants have a sense of the timing of when they're ready to offer that gift. I hadn't made a flower essence, a new one, up until 2 years ago for 19 years. There'd been information come through and created spiritual ranges, but not from the flowers. And the ones which came down are so pertinent. One called Colophyllum. It's all about getting out of your comfort zone and bring out your leadership, helping that connection to spirit to get your guidance of what's needed. And, it's not just, oh, you do that, you do this. It's like, this is where we all need to go. Come on, let's go. And bringing the others. And it's so resilient, this plant. And the tree itself, it grows right on the beach. Again, it's like dropping its seeds and traveling, going out. But the branches sometimes are covered with sand for, a couple of meters, and then it comes out again. And it's like this resilience that it brings. And also the division we have now. I'm sure you've got American people you're going to interview. And in the States, you ask someone, are you a Democrat or a Republican? And if they're different to what you are, like they just get dismissed. It's almost like a huge division. Or we might have it in our country as, oh, you didn't get vaccinated, or you're a conspiracy theorist, or you got vaccinated, you're an idiot, you believe what they told you, and there's that dismissal. So this is bringing back that tolerance and openness to hear what another point of view is.
Love that. It's so needed, and it's
Yeah,
amazing how that they just birth themselves and make themselves known
knowing that this
when they're
is
needed.
coming through. Yeah,
And it's interesting that the Sydney Rose came in 1999 because that's all about oneness, isn't it?
it is. Yeah.
And you'd think that that would have been born around about now, where I suppose we needed to kind of prepare ourselves for that lesson as well, didn't we, over the last decade?
I think it's such a key issue, and it's got that beautiful pink, but it's that universal love, like Christ's message 2,000 years ago, love your brother. And now we understand, well, my brother is just an aspect of me. So if I hurt someone else, I'm hurting myself. And to know it not intellectually, but at a very strong heart level.
Mm. Fantastic. Amazing work. So, do certain flowers correspond with particular life path numbers or master numbers? And could someone use the essences to support challenges or strengths related to their personal numerology chart?
Yeah, I've done the numerology chart of every patient I've ever treated since, back in the late 70s when I started practicing. And the beauty of numerology, which I'm sure, you love as well, is you get the birth date, you put the chart out, 15 seconds, you've got the strengths, the challenges of that individual. And then you can ask how they're dealing with it, what's this? And, so I'm always using the numerology. First thing I do with a new patient. And if we look at the ruling numbers, like if you're a ruling two, they're very loyal. They're not really wanting to be the boss. They're happy to be in a team and someone else. So you could use that one I've just mentioned, colloquium, for them. The ruling threes, I mean, they're so smart in that, they're so much mental power, but they can also be very critical. So, the yellow cowslip orchid, which grows in your state, Western Australia, for people with that critical nature. I'm a four, so there's that tends to be always busy and working and doing lots of things. So black-eyed Susan is a classic one, so they don't burn themselves out by doing too much. We think of a six with, there's a remedy turkey bush for creativity, but also sixes worry more. My wife's a six, and and I say, you're just being a big fat six, and joke with her because he gets worried about things. So Crowia, we won for that emotional tendency, is also for worry. Like eights, like the three, they get that responsibility in life so much quicker because they're very competent. People see that, give them extra responsibilities in early age. And sometimes they get a little bit too serious. So little flannel flower, to be a little bit more playful and have fun. Like the sevens and the nines can be over because they're wanting to help people, but they're that sense of not being able to read people, being a little bit easily gullible and misled. And so angel sword to help with discernment for those people, for example. You mentioned the master numbers, the 11s, 22, 33s. It's, we've got, all the remedies to open up those spiritual gifts that the master numbers have, for example. So it's a really lovely way to combine the numerology and with essences to make the most of all the talents and skills we have, at the same time address the challenges.
Absolutely. And it goes into like a lot deeper as well when you start looking at how many numbers in someone's birth chart that they've got. So, for example, my husband Mark was born the same day as me, but the year before. So he's got four ones, 16th of October 1971, and then no numbers on the soul plane. So it gives him four ones. So he's had issues with his thyroid gland because obviously it's hard for him to talk about his feelings. He bottles things up a lot. And of course, over a period of time, this has created this imbalance. So we've been using the old man Banksia, and it's completely rebalanced his thyroid. It's been amazing. It's been very, very good, helping him to, not have to go on to medication and stuff. So they work so well if you understand the chart of somebody and what the remedy is. It's essential. It's almost like something you should be taught at school, I think.
When we have over 20 staff, and if when we advertise for a new position, we always make sure we get the birth date, which people get a bit sensitive to these days and say, "Oh, no, it's numerology." So if we have someone working in the warehouse and like you, they have the three ones, they're going to be bored. They need that communication to interact and talk with people. Whereas if they've got the single one, maybe it's not so bad. And then just being able to see those aspects with there. And you know yeah, the three ones are very chatty to understand, and to understand that like for you with Mark, um, that four ones needing that little bit extra time and space themselves, often feeling not understood, and flannel flower to help them communicate their feelings. So yeah.
Absolutely. It's been a godsend, really. So in your experiences, are the universal flowers that support collective, sorry, are they universal flowers that support collective numerological years? Like, for example, we're in a universal year 9 this year, which is Mars fire, and we've seen that really
Yeah.
taking place across the planet. What with the fires in California at the beginning of the year, the threat of war, and all of that red survival stuff. So, and if so, how can people work with them?
Yeah. So last year, for the very first time, we brought out an essence, was the 2024, looking at what's going on energetically, numerologically, what essence would enhance it. And for this year, being in a year nine, the 2025 essence, which in fact, we had a combination remedy called emergence essence, which is great for emotional, physical upset. It's always been the most popular of all our products. And the 2025 is just, like so far ahead of it. It's because people are using getting such great results and telling all their friends. And, as a universal year nine, I put in Bohemia for people to embrace change. Also, there's going to be new opportunities coming. So, for them to be really open that people don't like change. Bottle brushes in there to help cope with any change, like if you're changing jobs, where you live, etc. And also because it's a brand new cycle, we put in um, a remedy called Dagger Heike, which is all about resentment. So you let go of that emotional baggage, and you're not bringing that into the new cycle. And the uh, five corners was another one for self-esteem. And I think in this new cycle, it's very important to be feel that sense of empowerment, really owning your own sovereignty. So there's a flower called Gymea lily, and I hope if you haven't seen it, Mark, I hope you get to see it. It's so striking. It's up to 7 meters tall, the stem. The leaves can be, 1.3 meters. And it's a huge flower. It's like this. It's almost like you need a swimming pool, not a bowl to put the flowers in. And it's all about standing up and being seen for who you are, and you know rather than holding back, and like not afraid to voice your opinions and say the spiritual beliefs that you have. And it's also that protection because all the negativity you might get for daring to stick your head above the pulpit, for example. So you know open to change, emotional clearing, being in your sovereignty. And last year we I made an essence. We launched it this year. First time out of Australia. It was done in Corsica, called Sedum. And it's this beautiful deep red. It's like the blood of the planet. And it's anchoring and grounding your higher self. So that communication from spirit is coming through. We put colophyllum to, you know, okay, where are you going? Get that sense of your direction in this new cycle. So yes, it's you can tie it in very much. Last year we tied in that sense of the eight for abundance as well.
That's wonderful. That's so good. And lots of red energy in there, really. I saw the
Yeah,
Gaia Lily. Because I remember seeing a video where you and your daughter were walking through the trees going, Gaia Lily. You're trying to find it. And then, of course, I was like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Because it also helps with spinal issues because of the doctrine of signatures within the stem. And I was like, oh, that'd probably be really good for me because I sometimes have a few lower back issues. So I
yeah.
was taking it by the bucket load, and it was really helping. So it's perfect that you've been able to bring so many powerful remedies together to support people as we move through such a tumultuous time. And like, because everybody is feeling it, like, even people who are not awake, they're feeling it, just as much as
Yeah.
the most spiritually enlightened. And, there's a lot of fear, isn't there, across the
Yes.
globe right now, and a
Not
lot of
knowing what's
uncertainty.
happening, the unknown. Yeah. And I,
Mm.
I think this new cycle, it's really shaking things up. And I think we've had, you know, if you might call it the old guard or whatever term you want, who've had that control, and that's been taken away, and they're not going out without a bit of a fight. And but this is part of that, that the spiritual energies to come and shift and bring us forward and to be open to that. And it's a bit of a birthing one, so it could be a bit of a wild and rocky ride, but that's the beauty of, the essences can help us go through that and ease the fear and anxiety and really see the positive things.
Yeah, 100%. That's great. So the doctrine of signatures and numerology both feel like sacred, symbolic languages. Do you see them as a part of a larger tapestry of ancient wisdoms? And how do they help us to return to natural alignment?
Yeah. If we would go back to when, say, herbal medicine, prior to allopathic medicine, the people were trained and are living more in villages. It was very agriculture. 90% of the people worked on the land. They understood those things. It was just very common nature. And, so this is a way to help really see what nature is offering us and not thinking that we just have to, try and dominate nature, but just work with that and to realize there's so much amazing healing. I mean, people feel better if you're not feeling well. You go for a walk through Kings Park, for example. Those beautiful gardens that they've set there and flowers and trees. You just feel so much better, and it's all that nature spirit, the Davic realm, just being in context with it. And I think these are just gifts to help us remember and work cooperatively with nature.
Oh, absolutely. It was amazing. Like when I used to work in corporate IT recruitment, I think that's when I met you. And I was like doing really well in the industry. I'd just arrived in Australia and I'd been doing it for about four years. And to get away from that sort of like, all that pressure at lunchtime, I was fortunate enough because I worked on St. George's Terrace. I used to walk up into Kings Park.
Yeah.
And during the spring, when all the wildflowers were out, I would be like, oh my God, look, there's the fringed violet and there's the desert pea and, there's the macrocarpa. And I was like, there's the boab. And I was like, oh my God. And it used to help me just recenter myself, and then I'd lift my vibration and I'd just like visualize all my deals coming in.
Mm.
And of course, when I get back to the office, I'd have phone calls and they'd be like, yes, we'd like to take so and so on to do this IT job. And I'd be like, this is amazing, because they take you into like a realm where you can recenter and become a conscious creator again. So they help you remember your sovereignty, that sovereign power you were talking about earlier on, which is amazing.
And I should say for the people listening who still probably didn't describe how an essence made, and very briefly, Edward Bach used to collect flowers, put them in water. The sun would shine on the flowers, releasing the vibration of the flower into the water. And that would take in England about 4 years. He also used to boil some of the buds. The sun is so much stronger in Australia. In recognition of Edward Bach's great work, I use that same sunshine method. So the flowers are picked in ideal conditions, and the flower represents the full potency of the plant. So if you extract the energy from the flower, you're getting the whole plant's energy. Put in the flowers picked with love and reverence in very pristine environments, the sun shining through, releasing that vibrational quality of the flower into the water, which is the main, and then added to brandy is preservative. That's the main concentrate, and then we dilute it down a few more stages till you get the remedies that you could just take directly as drops under the tongue, morning and night.
Yeah, and what's wonderful about that is that you recommend that people take 7 drops of
Mm.
it underneath the tongue. Like, why 7?
That was the message that kept coming through in the meditations, and then I thought about it, and 7 probably has more symbology than just about any other number. There's 7 chakras, 7 musical notes, the 7 vices, 7 virtues. From when rain falls to when it goes back into the ocean, there's 7 stages. The length of the leaf is in a ratio of 1 to 7 to the height of the tree. For 7 cultures, 7 is the, uh, the the representation of God and love. It's the learning of lessons we talk about in a year 7, or if you're a ruling 7, it's like, come and hit me with everything you got, life. And so it always felt good. And we've got one combination called travel essence. So when you're traveling, you take 7 drops hourly, and you can arrive after a long haul flight, like for us here in Australia, it's 23 hours to go to South America or Europe. And if you do it hourly on the plane, you don't get the jet lag. But we've put in 14 different essences in there. So when we're making it, we take 7 drops of the concentrate, put into the bottle the people take. So it's 98 drops. And I've experimented with taking it for 2 drops or 3 drops, and it never works as well. So, it's what's any other quality you associate with 7?
Well, I'm a day number 7, so it's the seeker of truth,
Yeah.
and it's justice and equality, and it's the explorer of the subconscious mind, and it's everything mystical and metaphysical. So it's exactly the right number. It carries a magical frequency. It's very Neptunian, but it's also like the seventh violet ray of healing and transmutation as well, which is associated with the Ascended Master Saint Germain and Archangel Zadkiel. So the transformation of one thing into another form. But it's interesting what you were saying about the travel essence as well, about as having 14 different flowers, because in the color mirror system that I work with, bottle number 14 is called movement. And it's very good for, sort of like it's often symbolic of that person might be going through traveling or unexpected travel, or they may be, sort of moving house, or they could be trying to showcase their gifts to a wider audience because it correlates with the color turquoise. So Neptune is bottle 7 in the color mirrors and 14 is movement. They're both turquoise bottles, and
Yeah.
turquoise relates to the number 7. And of course, it makes perfect sense that, that 14 flower essences should be included in a movement or a
One.
travel
Yeah.
remedy because it's also the 14 is like a 5, and the 5 is mercurial, which is
And yeah, and wanting
travel,
freedom to
freedom.
move and
Yeah.
experience.
So
We,
wonderful. It's amazing how it all synchronizes.
yeah,
Really
we had
beautiful.
one of our teachers. She was a pilot in Ansett. One of it went bust, but it was a local Australian airline, and they got her to look at the major stresses for both cabin and flight crew, and so she identified all these aspects which are being in line with the engine and engine vibration, and there's so many different dehydration, pressurized cabin, you don't digest. So with her, we created like which essence would balance all those different factors when you fly in a plane.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So thorough research, going into it. And I always, every time I go back to the UK, I always take the travel lessons with me, and it is true. Like I never get jet lag ever. I mean, even my sister, she's takes it now as well because, we often have to go back. So it's just a real, blessing to have it in your hand luggage. Now, how do you see the role of intuition when working with these systems? Can anyone learn how to read signs in nature, or is it something that unfolds with time and practice?
Anyone can do it, but certainly the more you do it, really helps. I think some people have natural gifts where they can tune in to the Davic realm, they can hear the messages a little bit clearer, but that's something that you can learn and practice to help certainly build up. And there was a veil that's been removed about a decade ago because they used it in the past. There was real exploitation of it by humanity on the Davic realm and nature spirits. And it was like a barrier put up, and that's been released. And now that you'll find that the plant kingdom and all the associated beings with it are wanting to communicate and interact more with us. So, and just having that understanding that they're there and communicating, and when you go into Kings Park or out into a wilderness area, just to acknowledge all the nature spirits and the dealers, and you'll find that you'll bring those energies in closer to you, so you have a better experience. And if you're tuning into the plants as to what healing they have, that will be easy because they're wanting to communicate their gift of the plant to you.
Yeah, I always do actually. I always sort of call in the gnomes and the salamanders, and I'm like, oh, they're all
Yeah.
there, like playing around, doing their little thing, which is amazing. So in today's fast-paced, digitally driven world, how can people reconnect with their healing power of the earth specifically and her natural rhythms through the flower essences?
Okay. We have a combination called electro, and it works on work with radiation. And there's so many forms. We mentioned plane travel. You get exposed to and absorb gamma radiation. If you have a fall, go to the hospital, check there's no broken bone. You've got your X-rays. You've got solar radiation. And we've also got electromagnetic. And as you said, like we're on devices where, got computers around us. There's phone towers, etc. So the electro is a really nice one to make sure you're not absorbing the radiation. And same when you go traveling, the radiation from Fukushima in Japan is now being measured from Alaska right down to Chile. So, and for people there, their diet very strong in seafood and seaweeds and things like that. There's levels of contamination. So, but even the electromagnetic, you'll find that the electro essence is great for reducing that, not allowing the impact on us. And then the other things that I think it's important is that we're bombarded with so many things. Our attention span, we're here, there, like the jacaranda, not to get distracted, say a little bit more focused. And just, some of the remedies like sundew to help you stay grounded. And that's a, tiny base plant, and it can be, a huge, big stem and this little flower on the top. And it's like showing you to make sure you're getting grounded.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And what about with like spiritual overwhelm or burnout or emotional overwhelm? What are good for those?
Okay. And again, people who four's very prominent, or in a personal year four, they in those April, August, they can really get burnt out if they're not resting, nurturing themselves. And if there is that exhaustion and burnout, then you mentioned it already because it grows in WA, macrocarpa. It's a huge red flower of one of the eucalypts, the biggest flower of all the 1,100 different eucalypts. So it's really working on that burnout and exhaustion. We have a combination called dynamis, which includes that to really boost your energies. That spiritual awakening. There's a flower that grows in the center of Australia called dog rose of the wild forces, and it's because when you go through like a spiritual opening, there can be a lot of confusion and chaos happening in your world, and then new guides might be coming in, so everything is changing. And the dog rose of the wild forces gives you that calmness when all that chaos happening around you. And also growing in the top end of Australia, we have some people call it the sacred lotus. Here in Australia, we call it red lily. So to have that spiritual opening, but stay very grounded. So there are a lot of essences that can help. And if it's just general overwhelm, then pawpaw. There's so much going on and trying to learn on, so pawpaw, we know as a fruit is a digestive, but as a flower essence, it's a digestive, but of ideas and information when you're just feeling overwhelmed.
Mhm.
Just, helping to assimilate and integrate a lot of information.
I use bush iris as well, like to help to rebalance my pineal gland.
Yeah.
It's really helpful. I use that in conjunction with um, the angel's word or the angel sword.
Yeah.
They're really beautiful at not only giving you the clear and concise spiritual discernment, but also just knowing that the pineal is fully balanced, which
Yeah.
is
And opening that whole third eye. So, yeah.
yeah, it's been amazing actually to do all of that. So okay, then. So, how do you see your work evolving then over the next few years? I mean, obviously, you mentioned that some new flowers came in after a long period without
Yes.
any. Do you see more flowers coming in? Are there new plant allergies or energies emerging in response to the planetary shift that we're experiencing?
Look, it's really me not thinking, oh, it's Saturday, I'm bored, there's nothing to do, nothing on Netflix, I'll go and make an essence. It's more when that plant communicates now is the time and to go. And so, yeah, I've got no idea really to, sometimes, being in Corsica, walking in the countryside and seeing this sedum, and just knowing straight away, well, I've got to make this essence. Same for colophyllum, that grows up in the far north Queensland. So, it's just like when those messages come, they um, there was a range of four spiritual remedies. It came a little bit differently, and we call them divine presence. And again, I had no idea this was starting. I'd been to been to Egypt before going to Europe to teach. It was the first time there. I'd never been drawn to Egypt. And we had a guide and someone who could, explain all the hieroglyphics. And then I got to England, and one of my spiritual hits that I get where I get my juice is having a session with someone called Sally Pullinger. She's a trans medium, brings through an ascended being called Old Chinese or Chung Fu. And I've been working with Chung Fu, for now 40 years, but this was back 10 years ago. And suddenly there was this amazing wailing coming through, Sally, and was, this language wasn't human language of any sort. And then when that finished, Chung Fu came through and said, "This is Isis. She's blessing your work and saying she wants to create a remedy with you." And up until that point, I thought Isis, it's like these gods and legends, not actual beings. And the next day, didn't know what to expect. I brought the bowls in, and I thought maybe it will come in very quickly and do some incantation or something, and that would be it. And it was this amazing love vibration that just flooded the room, and her singing, it was like I've never been so uplifted. It was quite incredible. And I had tears thinking, this energy is going into this essence. This is what a gift to give the world. And Isis describes herself as the divine mother. And, that her message is, give me your pain, give me your suffering, I'll give you love and courage. And it's like that divine mother, divine feminine, that really nurturing, loving quality. And, that came totally out of the blue. And the next year was Solar Logos, which is probably the most powerful of any essence I've been involved with. Not necessarily the best, but what it can do to shift and clear spiritual blockages. It's quite amazing. So, I think there's so much going on. There's new energies. So who knows what else the plant kingdom will feel it's appropriate, or some spirit to bring something down to help us. It's quite exciting to know where we're going and what's next.
Exactly. It'd be great if you could develop one that helps us stay anchored in the fifth dimension without having to keep dipping back into the third. Ugh.
Yeah. Oh, and yet, you got people in spirit, and think, what a privilege to have a physical body this lifetime, that's where we learn so much. And, like there's so many beautiful things. I mean, you're involved with travel, like, so many beautiful places that can uplift you, or, the visual experiences, music, the food. So there's some real gifts to be here in the physical.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, you've got to never take any of it for granted. And not to mention dogs as well. Dog energy is good, isn't it?
I've got my Rosie helping me on the interview.
Oh, there she
Talking here.
is. She's
Yeah.
very sweet. She's
Yeah.
beautiful. I like the way she's kind of dipping in and out of dimensions as you're holding her. That's great.
Yes. Yeah. So she just sometimes, I have if I see a patient at home, so sometimes she goes and sit on the couch next to me, that they're really processing a lot. Yeah. I can
Oh,
see your
that's
dog in the background. She's
yeah,
just
I've
got
got two
active after
spaniels.
Rosie.
Yeah, I've got Bailey and then I've got Monty, they're two Cocker Spaniels. Well, one's a Cocker Spaniel, one's a cross between a King Charles and a Cocker Spaniel, but they're just beautiful to have around, and they just help. They remind me of why I'm doing the work that I do,
Yeah.
and never go back into a regular normal 9 to 5 day job because they need
Yeah.
me here. That's it. Now, if flowers could speak directly to humanity right now, what do you believe their message would be?
I think the messages would be to get clear about what you're here to do and give you the courage and confidence to do it. And I think they would really be encouraging us to find peace within ourselves, to have kindness, and to have joy, like joy and excitement, really, when you're in a difficult time, like focusing on what really is joyful and happy for you. It just changes, stops the blockages, the energies flowing through you when you're really angry or very depressed or what have you, just to stay in that joyful, loving, peaceful state and know where you're going, and believe in yourself that you can do it.
Yeah, words of wisdom, and it really is the start of the ascension process. Is to feel joy and look for things that bring you joy instead of things that you feel obliged to do or things that you might have been programmed to do. And when you align with that, everything kind of unfolds organically, doesn't it? It's almost like you don't have to think about the how, the how and the when. You just think about the what it is you want and the why you want it
Yes.
and keep your vibe high, and then it all just sort of materializes out of nowhere, which is
Mm.
which is lovely, isn't it? Now, finally, what if you had to distill your life's work down to a single intention or a vibration? What would that be?
Look, I feel very motivated just to s- let let people know about the essence, show them a scope, that healing gift that they bring, let them know about them. And I think when I started my work, my goal was I want them in every house so the children growing up, that the essence will be so helpful. Like, when I think of, just about everyone who didn't have essences, how all those difficult times in childhood, especially, how much easier it would have been if there had been the essences to really love and nurture and support them. So I think what I'm here to do is really get the message out about this healing gift and modality, and yeah, make a bit of a difference, get people, doing what they really love, and yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's such beautiful intention and so needed right now. Well, thanks again, Ian, so much for joining me today on the Numerology Show. It's been fascinating to see exactly, how the beautiful flower kingdom and numerology all interlink so effortlessly, and you've demonstrated that really well. I'd love to have a future conversation with you on a later show to delve deeper into the nitty-gritty of Pythagorean numerology, maybe away from the flower kingdom. That would be amazing. But, a huge heartfelt thank you to you for sharing all of that wisdom, your own journey, and of course, these incredible insights into the magical Australian bush flower essences and the sacred language of numerology. If you'd like to explore Ian's work further, obviously, please make sure you check out of his books that are available on his website, which is ozflowers.com.au, isn't it?
Yep, ausflowers.com.au. And, we've got the numerology workshops available online as well. So if you really love numerology, you can look at that. But if you just want to go and explore the essences, a lot of information there and videos of all the flowers.
Yeah, and they are amazing. The courses that Ian offers are absolutely fantastic. They're so well put together and so informative. So you can't go wrong with such incredible, impeccable wisdom. So, if you have enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to like and subscribe and, even leave us a comment. It helps me to grow my channel and it really helps us to reach more beautiful people like yourself. So until next time, keep looking up into the skies and look for signs. Keep trusting the numbers that you're seeing, and also keep blooming into your higher self as well. Once again, Ian, thank you so much, and I'll see you
Thank you,
next time.
and just congratulations on all the work you're doing. And yeah, really nice to chat to you today.
Oh, thank you, Ian. Bye for now.